Hello, I'm Shona and I'm from Mindset in Motion. And I actually want to talk to you today about me and why I set up Mindset in Motion. So I spent 20 years as an employment law lawyer, and I probably saw and heard every story under the sun. And I often got criticized by my own employers through my whole career. And I had a couple of different employers for being too empathetic with my clients. I didn't really see that as a problem as long as I managed their expectations well. But I would always put myself into the shoes of that person. And I often found myself feeling like a bit of a counsellor sometimes. And then my own work related stress, as I guess you can call it, started about 6 years ago. And it was not long after I had my first child. And when I returned to work, I requested to work flexible working hours, and that was agreed. And when I returned to work, I had a new line manager. Now, anyone out there who does employment law will know that it's incredibly fast paced. And if you don't keep on top of the directions, etc., and the case management conferences that come in and all the posts that comes in on a daily basis, you can quite easily fall behind really, really quickly. So I would have a Wednesday off and I would finish at 4 on the Tuesday, the day before. We weren't allowed to take any of our work home with us or check any of our emails at all at home. So when I came in on a Thursday morning, I was supposed to work until 4 on a Thursday. But on the Wednesday and also the Tuesday, because our post wouldn't come down till 4 when I'd already left, I wouldn't have had any of my work allocated to anybody else. And I'd have 2 days worth of work piled up, plus about at least 80 emails. And I was expected to take on more work on that Thursday. And if I left the office before 11 o'clock on the Thursday night and again on the Friday, I would be extremely lucky. I also found myself working through lunch breaks over, quite shortly after. And it didn't take long until my performance did start to dip. I started making mistakes. I would come home exhausted in the night. And probably a few months of working like that, I started having panic attacks, and I didn't even realize they were panic attacks. I didn't know what was happening to me. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before. And I actually felt like a bit of a freak. I even struggled going into the centre of Bristol where I worked. Every time I went into the centre of Bristol, even socially, I would have a panic attack. So I stopped going out with friends. So I started feeling like I was losing my friends because they'd stop asking me to go out with them. I became a very bad partner because I just didn't want to interact with my partner. And I also felt like I wasn't a very good mum either. So that was that situation. Eventually, probably about 9 months of working at that high level of stress, I collapsed and I was rushed to hospital with a suspected heart attack. Thankfully, it wasn't a heart attack, but I was eventually diagnosed with a condition called fibromyalgia. Now, although that's not life-threatening, it's an extremely crippling condition. Now, I managed to control my pain when I get the attacks, which seems to be brought on by extreme stress, with the power of mindfulness. And that worked for me extremely well. But I actually left my job. I took a huge pay cut after being there for 14 years and a job I'd once absolutely loved. And I took a job closer to home, which wasn't so stressful. And I did that for another 2.5 years. Then I got headhunted for a job back in the city centre. And I really had to think carefully if that's something I wanted to do, go back into, high-flying legal work. But I felt like I was on the way back up. I'd been at that rock bottom position where I felt like all my self-esteem had been driven out of me. And I found this power of mindfulness, which was incredibly healing. It's brilliant if you suffer from stress and anxiety. And I took the job and I absolutely loved it. The first 9 months was fabulous. And I won Employee of the Quarter award. And then 9 months into the job, I had a very serious cycling accident once cycling into work. And I suffered extremely serious facial injuries. Yes, I had a very good surgeon. And, on the plus side, I got to have a facelift in my mid-40s. So, you can't completely complain, and it was free on the NHS. But, on a more serious note, I suffered very serious injuries, and I was given a 20% chance of survival. And all I can remember when I came around was feeling extremely guilty that the paramedics wouldn't take me to work that day. But, once I realised the extremity of my injuries, I had a fractured skull. I was wearing a helmet, by the way. I was left deaf in my left ear, which didn't come back for 14 months when I had to have more surgery. And 6 months after this accident happened, I managed to return to work. And that should have been on reduced duties, according to occupational health. But my employers weren't so forthcoming. And this only added to my stress getting worse because my performance dipped as a result. And I was under a lot of pressure. And eventually I was diagnosed with episodic depression as a result of the trauma I'd been through and also the stress I was under at work. As soon as I got diagnosed with that, my employers were concerned about this, and I was basically told that I would either need to go on a performance improvement plan until I was better or leave, basically. So, I took the latter option, decided to leave because I wasn't going to go through this again and re-qualify. So that's what I did. So I re-qualified as a life coach. I got a diploma in that. I did my NLP, which is the Neuro-Linguistics Practitioner course. I'd started practicing mindfulness and studying it a few years back. I then completed my master's in mindfulness because I had a background in law and psychology. And every part of it I could relate to. And for me, it was important as well to make sure that other employers don't do this to their staff and that they have some form of mental health policy in work for when things go wrong. So it's all good and well doing mental health awareness talks in workplaces, but it's then putting that into place and make sure that you understand what to do when your employee has a mental health issue. And I hate the word mental health, by the way. We should just call it health. I don't know what anybody else thinks, so feel free to comment. But for me, it was about understanding what's out there. So I did quite a lot of extensive research as well. And from looking at just Deloitte, which is one of the main places that provide statistics, mental health costs the UK business 33 billion to 42 billion pounds each year. Now, if you break that down into, say, Starbucks coffees, that's about 3,000 Starbucks coffees per employee. That's an incredible amount of people. And Mind UK did a survey with UK employees, and this was spread across the whole of the employment sector in the UK. And this was at the end of 2018. And out of 9,501 employees, 70% of them said they were struggling with some form of mental health at work. That's an incredible amount of people. That's over 6,500 people. Now, I've met some absolutely amazing people on my journey over the last couple of years. One of them happens to live opposite me, and his name's Ben Smith. Now, this is Ben's book. I recommend this book to anyone. It's Ben Smith's 401 Challenge. Now, if you don't know Ben ran 401 marathons in 401 days a few years back. And he's in the process of training for his next crazy challenge, if you want to call it that. And I'm involved in that, which I'm very proud to be involved in, where he's cycling and running across all the states in the US. And this one's he's going to do that in 104 days. So it's 401 backwards. Now, Ben's story is incredible. He was extremely bullied in school. He went to boarding school. He tried to take his own life a few times, but he rose back up to the top. He even got married, and then realised he was gay. And he's now getting married to his partner, Kyle, in November this year. And I can't wait. I'm so happy for him. He's actually one of the most amazing people I have ever met in my entire life. And he does all of this for charity, for anti-bullying charities. And, I recommend this guy to anyone because he is my superhero. And he has helped me with my recovery. just from reading his book, from talking to him, from his inspiration that he provides to so many people locally and nationally. And there are other people as well that I've come across. There's somebody else that I came across called Amanda Newton, who had a cycling accident a couple of years back, and she came off her bike whilst training for a triathlon, and then, I think it was an Ironman competition, and then she came off her bike and now she's paralysed, but she does not let that bother her at all, and she's even recently became a pilot and jumps out of aeroplanes, and she is just terrific. And she actually knows Ben because she did her first marathon in a wheelchair, on Ben's last 401st marathon, I think, which he did, which was like, when I found that out, I was just like, wow, okay, this is really cool. So, what I do now is I'm so passionate about helping other people who are going through either as individuals, work-related stress, and helping them deal with that, working out their project plan, finding out what their stumbling blocks are, managing any risks, and understanding as well that you can go from being at rock bottom and working your way back up with just some really simple structured goals in place. And I've had proven track records now working with people that this works. And because I've been through it myself, it's not just the fact that I've got an employment law background. I've been through it personally, and I really, really get people and I listen to them. And then from the business side, when I work in the corporate world as well, I can provide mindfulness workshops, which is really great for productivity. They don't interfere with the working day. I can do them in lunch hours so that when employees go back to work in the afternoon, they are far more productive and that stress is eliminated. And we all know this, having no more stress and having that eliminated makes people far more productive in the workplace. But what my service provides is that will negate the expensive recruitment costs, because there's not as much staff sickness, there's not as much high staff turnover, the morale is better in the office. And I'm not just on the employer side here. This is all about as well helping employees get better in the workplace. I'm 50-50. So if you think my service can help you, then drop me a message on LinkedIn or have a look at my website. I've got loads of useful blogs as well. And my website address is www.mindset-in-motion.co.uk, and feel free to subscribe to my YouTube site as well. Thanks, everyone. Bye.